Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to today's show. Wow, today's episode is going to be powerful, and we are going to share a love story filled with adventure and trauma, pleasure and pain, joy and sadness. Our guest today is Terry Adamson, who currently resides in Malibu, California. She's had a very full career as an 18-year Malibu Superior Court Commissioner. She's an adjunct professor at Pepperdine University, Caruso School of Law. She is a published author, a life coach, and a mom. She's currently helping people navigate transitions and overcome challenges through Terry Adamson Life Coaching. Terry and her late husband, Grant, were deeply in love. They had a mutual love for adventure and traveled extensively as they frequently answered the call to new experiences. Terry is here to tell us her incredible story of adventure, love, loss, and the growth that followed. Terry, my friend, welcome to the campfire.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thank you for such a wonderful intro and for your friendship.
Yeah. Terry and I met in a mastermind group through Robert Holden and his Success Intelligence Mastermind. And both of us have gone through a tremendous amount of growth this past year, actually the past 2 years. But Terry, let's just jump in. And if you can, just tell us a little bit about life for you today.
Well, I love outdoor adventures and being with nature. My late husband, Grant, the love of my life, I used to call being out in nature the church of the open sky, and because that's when we feel closest to God and just the wonder and the awe. We loved so many outdoor activities, and I still enjoy most of them. We were avid hikers, and we'd go on a lot of trips, including some international adventures, doing scuba diving, hiking, horseback riding, and kayaking, whitewater river rafting, snow skiing, water skiing, and even a little bit of surfing.
True adventurers. And I love, you had texted me that the other day. I love that he called it the church of the open sky. That's just such a great metaphor for what we're doing here on this podcast. So where are some of the places that you guys traveled to, Terry?
So we, fortunately, with our love of scuba diving, that led us to some amazing exotic locations and amazing adventures. The most interesting of which was in Indonesia, because we were on a boat with friends and family, just going from island and little atoll to other atoll. And we went places where we never saw another tourist for 10 days. And we went to one little island where they'd never had visitors come. And they took a break from their school that day, and we got to meet the kids, and it was just completely joyous. And we also dove in Palau, which is amazing, lots of places in the Caribbean. Grant and I did a lot of international horseback rides. We belonged to a group that would ride in Mexico for people from all over the world, which is just so interesting. And we did that a lot of years, as well as riding extensively in New Zealand and Ireland. Took the kids on great horseback adventures also. And then as a family, we did a lot of ski trips, mostly Sun Valley, Idaho, but a lot of other places like Colorado, and did a lot of really fun water skiing trips. And then as a family, our most exciting adventure trip was an African photo safari. Grant and I did 3 African photo safaris, one with our kids and 2 on our own, and went to Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, South Africa, just absolutely life-changing, amazing trips. We were fortunate enough, we were able to go on a safari where we rode elephants for 5 days. And part of the time we'd walk alongside the elephants and, the little babies would play with you. It was the cutest thing,
Wow.
Scott. I remember, like, the little baby elephants would take their trunk and, like, play with your hat, like, take your hat off and put it back on just to goof around. And we also did walking safaris, which is just an amazing thing. I remember one time we were on a walking safari. It was just Grant. This one was just Grant and I and our guide, and the jeep that was with us when we weren't on foot came tearing up to us, and there was a bunch of wildebeest in the area. But what we couldn't see because it was blocked by all the wildebeest was that there was a cheetah amongst them.
Oh
And
my
so it's
gosh.
like,
Yeah.
there's a
Wow.
cheetah. So that was really exciting.
Yeah.
Um, and anyway, the people were amazing in Africa. That I love animals so much, and I expected the animals to be incredible, which they absolutely were. We were fortunate enough we get to see all the big five. I especially love lions and giraffes. But what I didn't expect was just that the people were just so amazing. And even like we get to go to their villages, people would invite us to their
Mhm.
homes. Even the people that didn't have material things were just so wealthy in terms of their love and their spirit, and they would dance and sing, they were having they seemed to be having a very full, rewarding, enjoyable life. And the
Happy and
sceneries, the sunsets, and just the just the grasses. And one thing I really remember, particularly from Africa, that just really amazed me was when there was lions in the area, the animals would warn each other. From the birds to other animals, they would send out
oh, wow.
calls to each other to like, they were in this survival thing together.
Yeah, they're in it together. Wow, that's
Mm.
awesome. I hadn't heard that. So these are these trips that you're talking about. I'm hearing skiing and scuba, and I know you're just an avid hiker. I mean, this is all very physical activity. Like you guys, these aren't sit on the beach and drink margarita kind of trips. Like what calls you to those kind of trips that require the physical activity? What is it about that?
There's something about the energy, I think, with that, and just it makes you feel so alive and connected with nature. And Grant and I and particularly love to hike, the kids also. And we trained for a year to hike Mount Whitney, and that was a goal that
Oh
we
yeah,
had. I'm so
awesome.
happy we were able to achieve that because we went up and down in one day, and most people do it overnight. I wanted to do it in one day, really just because I didn't want to have a heavy camping backpack on. I just wanted to
Right,
be able to do it with a a
right.
backpack. And we were just thrilled. The training actually was so much fun, Scott, because it took us, we ended up hiking in Aspen, Colorado, and different places in Idaho and Mammoth. And it was just super, super fun for us. But we were able to do it in a day, and both just felt a huge sense of accomplishment and joy
Yeah, yeah.
about that. And then some of the other places we've done some adventure travel. We took the kids to Egypt, which we all love culture and history too, and meeting people from around the world. And some of the other interesting places we went to Machu Picchu and the
Yeah.
Amazon, and that was really different and interesting. And I've also been to India. And I gotta say, Scott, the more I travel, the more I find what you and I have found in our studies of spirituality, which is that there's really a oneness. I
Yes.
just feel so connected. I've always told my kids I want them, we wanted as a family to do a lot of traveling because I said it's broadening in every sense of the word. And that's how you really relate to other people. And I think it's really a gift because my kids were able to see people around the world are so alike that we all, at the end of the day, we want our families to be safe and peaceful and happy. And we want to have community, we want to have friendships, and And the more I get to know people from everywhere, and the more I find that we really are. We are a lot like the African animals. We're in this
Yeah.
together. Let's help each other.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing you say, I mean, this list, like, I'm trying to keep a list here of all the places that you've been, and I feel like you got just about every continent covered here, but you've been so many different places, and what I'm hearing you say is everywhere you go, it's almost like the world gets smaller because you realize that people are the same no matter where you go.
In a really good way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So, so how did you and Grant meet, and how did you guys like? Do you remember when you guys first realized that you were both like you both had this mutual love for adventure?
Yes, that's a great question. So we were really fortunate to meet. We met at orientation my freshman year at UC San Diego. He was a year ahead of me, and so it was immediate. We fell head over heels in love, and I was with him we were together from 18 years old on until his tragic death. We were a couple for 37 years, married for 30, and have two, lovely, sweet, beautiful daughters, and a great Labrador. And so, Grant, I've always loved the outdoors. I'm someone who, as a kid, I mean, I was lucky. I was raised in the way that my kids were able to be raised, which was like, go outside, go play,
Yeah.
come in at dark, come in at dinner
Yeah.
time. And I loved that. And we were just out, running around, hiking in the hills, playing ball, just really being outside, riding my bike. And my kids were lucky. We were raised. We had a horse ranch we shared with our extended family, and so they were raised right next to a horse ranch where they could just go and literally it's like go outside, come in at dark. So I've always really just felt really comfortable in nature, but,
Yeah.
I wasn't raised with much travel at all. My family just didn't have the opportunities to
Sure.
do much of any travel, and Grant's family was very into, adventure travel, sailing, and he super athletic. He did competitive ocean swimming and triathlons, and it was wonderful for me because he introduced me to all of these sports. Like, I didn't know how to do any of those, all the things that I told you we've done
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
We had our own kayak. We used to kayak in the ocean every week, and we were super outdoorsy. And he taught me all of those sports and activities. And I think we both knew right away that we wanted to do a lot of travel and a lot of adventure travel together. Neither Grant or I um, are very interested in much of the way of material things.
Yeah.
We like to have a beautiful home and to be in environments that are beautiful and near nature. I'm lucky enough that I can see the ocean, and it makes me really happy. But we both always thought that what mattered was
Mhm.
experiences and exposing our kids to travel and to experiences as opposed to accumulating
Yeah.
material items.
Absolutely. Do you remember the first trip that you guys took together, like the first adventure
Yes.
trip?
This is really funny because my kids know that, I actually like really nice hotels. I mean, I find camping we did a number of water ski camping trips with the kids, and it's really fun. But I am someone who I'll admit I appreciate a really nice hotel, and
Yep.
so my kids thought that the story was very funny. My very first trip away with Grant, when we'd been dating a few months, we lived in San Diego, so a lot of people would just go over the border. So the first trip we did together was in Mexico. He was an avid surfer, and we went to a place called Rosarita Beach in Mexico so that he could surf and I could swim. And it was actually a fabulous, fun, romantic trip. But the funny part of the story is our accommodations. The fancy place that we stayed on this first trip away together was his car. We slept in his car, and it wasn't a big car, Scott. It was a really little Opel little car.
I love it.
But you know what? We had so much fun. We didn't care, and my kids, later when I told them that story, they thought it was so funny.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, just like a lifetime. And so you guys have lived in California pretty much your entire married life, and you've raised a family there, and you've mixed in a really high impact career with travel and raising a family, yeah.
We've also done a lot of boating adventures, where Grant was also a really avid sailor, and we did something called bear boating, British Virgin Islands, and some other places, and that's really special. Go with other friends, and we did the Channel Islands quite a bit, and with our kids, which is where bear boating is where Grant was the captain, I was one of the galley girls,
Nice.
and so we did everything ourselves, and that's really amazing. And what's very special about that is if you like a certain island or atoll, you just stay there longer.
Yeah.
There's no agenda.
I love it.
And yeah, you get to go places with that for scuba diving and snorkeling where there's not a lot of other people.
Yeah, so you talked about, like experience over material things, and obviously you've been
Mhm.
so many places and you have so much experience. I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit more about that, like experience over material things, and how have you grown and what have you learned through all these travel experiences?
Well, yeah, to me, it really, at the end of the day, is all about what to me, like, I think sometimes, well, because I did have a near-death experience, which we'll talk about in a few
Mhm.
minutes.
Yep.
I actually had more than one, but one where I was literally in the process of dying. Um, it does it's very sobering, and so I'm not afraid of dying at all. I wanna make sure I live my life in a way that I'm aligned with my values, and a way that I'm spreading loving kindness to other people. That's the most important thing to me, being a nurturing, loving mom, and just relationships are the most important to me. I absolutely cherish my friendships,
Mhm.
and I'm still really in love with Grant. He's in my heart always. He always will be, and I feel so blessed. But as far as, to me, it's all about the experiences that you can have, and I think that we grow so much as we get to know people from all different cultures
Mhm.
around the world, and just that's how we connect, and that's really helped me, and I know my daughters too, to see, like, what really matters in life.
Yeah.
And I think what really matters the most is kindness.
Yeah,
Love
you've talked I mean,
love and kindness.
you and I have had a lot of conversations about that, and I know that's something that you always come back to is that loving kindness, and I wrote
Mm,
that down here. You just talk about the meaning of the loving kindness to you, because I know that's something that's really important to you.
absolutely, and Robert Holden, who's you're and my mentor, has been amazing guide in that way. It is, I'd say it's the most important thing to me, and I think an important aspect of that is you gotta love yourself first, and of course, I don't mean in a narcissistic way, but but be in a place where, like, I enjoy my own company, and, you know, feel good about yourself and your values, and then just spread spread the kindness and the love to other people. Like, I'm happy if I do anything that makes someone's day any bit better, any day. I'm always friendly and smiling and talking to people, and if I don't know them, I'm the person that, I'll go if I'm at a restaurant. I'll go if I'm going to the restroom or something. Then on my way back, I might have a couple of conversations with people, and I'm really happy to talk to everybody, to waiters, to Uber or cab drivers. I love just hearing the stories of other people, and and the girls and I have been told that through the accident that we went through, that we've been inspiring to other people, and I'm happy to talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, anything that I can. That's why I really segued into life coaching, because having gone through really severe trauma and coming through the other side of that with strength and with more compassion than I ever had before, and finding that I am so much more resilient than I ever realized that I was.
Yeah.
I really want to help other people to get their mojo back, reignite their passion for life, and to see that, the old saying, the only way out is through. And whether it's grieving, whether it's emotional pain and or physical pain, you get through it and you get through the fog and wow, there are bright blue skies on the other side.
Yeah, and I appreciate you going there. So, yes, so you did have a tragic accident. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I really do think of my life in terms of pre and post accident.
Hmm.
So it's been 8 years now, and Grant and I were celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary with our two daughters, who were at the time aged 24 and 20 in Switzerland, and it wasn't on our anniversary, luckily, but we were in a hot air balloon crash where it was incredibly tragic. The balloon hit a power line, which is the most dangerous thing that could happen
Right.
if you're in a hot air balloon. And typically, if that happens, everyone dies because typically either they get electrocuted or the balloon explodes or goes on fire or people fall and die in the crash. So my husband did die, which was so unbelievably sad and tragic. Fortunately, he did not suffer. It was immediate. So, and my daughters and I, we fell. I think it was 135 feet. So, and the balloon has these lines. There might be called stanchions, but there's these lines, and I think we were hanging on. I think there's 12, and we were hanging on by two. It was
Yeah.
something like that, which would have, if those two would have broken, it would have separated the basket from the balloon, and of course, my daughters and I and the pilot would have died as well. As it was, we crashed really hard and we were hospitalized for months. I was in ICU for 6 weeks, hospitalized altogether for 2.5 months. And on landing, we all had punctured lungs. I had both my lungs punctured and had to have a tracheotomy at the scene. And we all broke our backs and a lot of other body parts. I broke my jaw in 4 places, had a head injury and a slight brain injury that did not affect my cognitive functions, fortunately, and the brain injury was not permanent, so that was lucky. And I did have spinal cord injury, so I walk with like braces in my shoes. They're called AFOs. They don't show,
Hmm.
so it's really not so bad. Like it's not nearly, that part is not nearly as bad as I thought it would be. And anyway, I also broke my leg. I have a rod in my leg, which doesn't cause me any problems. And I had internal injuries, including a perforated liver, and my diaphragm was floating. And they didn't know at first about the internal injury, and it was causing bleeding. So I almost died from that, as well as the punctured lungs. And we all underwent very severe spine surgeries. One of my daughters had a 17-hour spine surgery, and all three of us were in very critical condition. There was 2 times during, also broke my pelvis in both places, a lot of injuries. But anyway, there was 2 times during my recovery where I was in the process of dying, and one time 2 times my heart stopped, and one time the EpiPen didn't work, but the defibrillator did.
Hmm.
And so some amazing things that came out of that. We had incredible support of family and friends. We had, I think, 16 people come to Switzerland from the United States to be with us and nurse us through this,
Right.
including my friends, Suzelle and Kathleen, that each took off a month of their incredibly busy lives. And just people were our friends. Like I knew we had great friends, but you really don't know. You go through something like that, and it's just unbelievable how incredible people were.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I was at first not expected to live, and then I wasn't expected to be able to walk again. And that it took about a year to learn to be able to walk again and dress myself. It was a lot of work, 7 days a week PT
Hmm.
for a really long time. But I was also told, and this is one thing I want to just put out there because I want other people not to be discouraged sometimes when they're told
Right.
something really negative, that I was told by 2 different speech therapists in one of the hospitals that I wouldn't be able to teach anymore because it turns out I had a brain injury that paralyzed my left vocal cord, but we didn't know what it was at the time.
Okay.
And so I couldn't articulate, I couldn't project my voice, and I also couldn't articulate in a way to speak in a way that I could be heard. And also, my jaw, like I said, was broken in 4 places, and most of the teeth in my mouth had to get repaired. Some of them were knocked out, and they were all messed up. So anyway, um, but I did my one of my closest friends, Wendy, and my daughter said, "That's not acceptable, mom. We're just gonna take you to whatever doctors, and we'll get you so you can talk again." And, sure enough, within a year, I spoke at Pepperdine's law school graduation in front of 1,000 people.
Amazing.
And then later that year, I spoke at the annual law school dinner, also in front of about 1,000 people, and I'm talking fine. So that I think is was a really great lesson for me and for some people close to me. And then my students at Pepperdine got to see me progress from the wheelchair to the walker to crutches to a cane to look ma no hands walking. And with my daughters too, it was that progression. And so I know that's been inspiring to people because I can still we my kids and I go on adventure trips. We went snorkeling in Hawaii for their Christmas present last year. We were able to do that, and I'm still hiking. I can't do the extensive kind of hikes that I could before. I can't do something really slippery, but I can still hike. I could even hike something steep as long as it's not slippery. And I'm able to one thing I remember, Scott, that I wanna pass along is when I was in the hospital and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to walk again, um, I remember asking the doctors. I was not paralyzed, and I remember asking the doctors if I love to swim. I swim every single day, 7
Right.
days a week,
Yeah.
and I remember saying, "Would I be able to swim?" And they said, "Absolutely." And I said, "Would I be able to do a stationary bike?" And they said, "Yes." And I remember thinking, "Okay, well, that's wonderful."
Yeah, it's the bright side.
I could take a stationary bike, I could put it outside, I could be with nature, even if I'm not gonna be able to walk, and I would take my wheelchair and I would go all around and get arm exercise, in the hospital, and I just felt like, "Okay, well, I can still be active and my brain's fine, I can read and use my mind," and so and of course, I know, like, gosh, people like Karen Dark, who was on your podcast, so incredibly inspiring, and I know people who have been paralyzed who are having very full, incredible, amazing
Oh, yeah.
lives, or enjoying life and also touching other people in a positive
Oh,
way.
yeah.
So for me, like, I felt like, okay, I could still do these things, and now I've always enjoyed being out in nature so much, but I have to say, when you go through something like this where you think you might not be able to again, it's even sweeter. It's just like I go out on my walks every day, and I literally just, like, smell how beautiful and fresh it is outside and take it all in. And I remember in the hospital, the one thing that was a turning point, there was 2 turning points for me. One, when I got out of ICU. One was, of course, being able to see my kids again. We were all undergoing so many surgeries, and we couldn't be together. That was incredibly hard, especially I'm really close to my kids. And as a mom, they were going through life-threatening surgeries, and I couldn't be there for them because I was in ICU going through 12 surgeries, and obviously they didn't have their dad, but we had incredible friends who became second moms to them. So that was a big turning point. And the other thing was, at some point, I think it was one of my kids got the great idea that we could take me in my wheelchair, and there was a little patio outside off the floor in the hospital. And I remember, Scott, I just had tears in my eyes because
Getting
I hadn't
outside.
been
Yeah.
outside in
Yeah.
months.
Uh-huh.
And it was just, it's so amazing, like, to be able to feel the air and be outside and touch something green and see the blue sky. And I thought,
Absolutely.
yeah, like, life is really worth living, and Grant's still in my heart. And so the girls and I went through severe trauma, but I tell my kids now, I'm going through, and I think we're going through what I call post-traumatic strength. And I know the three of us all want to help other people. We're all compassionate people, and we want to help anyone who's been through trauma. And for me, my niche in life coaching is to help people get through really difficult transitions, and especially to help people find their resilience, find their strength, and regain their joy. Um, it as much as I love my and miss my husband every single day, all the time, I do have my joy de vivre again. It definitely took a while, but I do have the love and joy for life again. And yeah, I'm still doing great adventures with my kids and with good friends. And I'm going to see Robert Holden this summer,
Yay.
in England, and a really close friend invited me to Greece. So there'll be wonderful opportunities for
The
girls.
adventure continues. You and I have talked about that concept of post-traumatic strength. That's something that I know you like to talk about, and some people might have heard it as post-traumatic growth, and you like the spin of
Mhm.
post-traumatic of strength, and I love that too. You mentioned like early on some of the fears, the thoughts, the doubts, and I'm just curious if you could share a little bit more about that and how you got through that.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you, because this goes back to Robert Holden. It was devastating to lose Grant. He was the love of my life. He still is, my best friend, my rock. And for the kids to lose at such a young age their dad. And then the injuries were so extensive. I mean, the pain was, I was fortunate to get off pain meds right away. And now I don't take anything, not even Advil. I take absolutely nothing from the studies I've done. But
Well, I also know about you that you do a lot of self-care, you do a lot of meditation to avoid
I do. I med
medication, right?
Exactly, that's exactly right. I love it. I meditate every day. But what was amazingly helpful for me was I've been studying spiritual and positive psychology for over a decade now. So at
Mhm,
that time, I'd been studying it out of interest for about 2 years.
mhm.
Just before the accident, I had just finished Robert Holden's book called Shift Happens, SHIFT. I
Mm,
know you know it. Shift
right,
Happens, which is all about stuff happens that's out of our control. We can't control that, but what we do have the control over is our own reactions and our own perspective and the way that we reframe whatever happens to us. So I just finished this book, and it's amazingly inspirational. So after the accident, we were all in so much physical and emotional pain and went through so much. And I um, I remember saying to my kids, so we have a couple choices here. We cannot undo what has happened, but our choices are, we can just feel like victims and pity ourselves and just be in pain and be sad, or we can, choose to still have full lives and have the best lives that we can. And I remember my older daughter Lauren saying to me, there was one time I was really, really sad because it was our actual wedding anniversary on this
mhm.
day, and I was in the hospital, and I was crying and obviously missing Grant so much, and knowing we would have been celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary. And so I was texting with my daughter Lauren, and I'll never forget her text. She texted to me, and she said, "Mom, we owe it to Dad to honor him and to still have the best lives that we can." One thing I
I
didn't
love that
mention,
so
Scott,
much.
one thing I didn't mention was my husband actually saved our lives. So when we don't remember exactly what happened,
Mhm,
because one thing that happens when you have that kind of fall and head injuries is, I think it almost always happens, that there's a partial amnesia.
mhm.
So we don't know what happened just before. But we were headed to the power lines, and my last memory is huddling together and hugging and saying that we love each other. And I know that my husband was hugging us. He was on the outside, protecting us with his body and
Mhm.
hugging us. And then it was me, my daughter Lauren, and the younger daughter Megan, and the more in the middle, and we're all hugging each other. So he literally buffered his wife and daughters from the power line and saved our lives, and put his life in more danger and saved our lives is what he did. And so we do owe it to him not to waste that. And so I feel like, to the extent that I can do anything to help anyone else get through suffering, to get through trauma, that's what I wanna do. And Robert Holden's been amazing to me in these books I've read. Seth Hayes, there's a book called A Liberated Mind, and there's a book called The Way Out by Alan Gordon about getting through what's called neuroplastic pain, how a lot of pain is actually chronic pain. It's actually located in the brain as
Mhm.
opposed to the body part. And so I'm able, through meditation and just through all the self-coaching and all the coaching that I've done, to not have to take any pain meds whatsoever. And what I do is not let the fear factor attach. So if when I feel like back pain coming on or sciatica coming on, and it can be excruciating, when I feel it coming on, I what I do is I don't do what I used to do and what a lot of people do, which is having this like, oh my gosh, the pain's so bad. What if it doesn't go away? What if it gets worse? What if it's not bearable? I don't do that anymore. Instead, I say to myself, I do deep breathing, and I say to myself, this pain is temporary. I'm healed. I'm safe. I'm going to get through this pain. I've gotten through much worse pain than this, and I was fine. This pain is going to go away. I'm safe, and I'm going to be okay. And instead of getting mad at my back or my body part, I'll kind of give myself a little, back rub and just say, hey, what would feel good? Would lying down feel better? Taking a walk, and I just have a calm about it, and then I'll get in the flow, get into something that I'm passionate about, whether it's walking, swimming, writing, being with friends or kids or coaching or playing with my Labrador, and then I'll notice, wow, I'm not in pain.
It's working for you, Terry. It's totally working for you. So, talking about fear, one thing that struck me when we first met was that you talked about not being afraid of dying. And you
Mm,
said that when you were in the hospital that you had a near death experience and almost an out of body experience of sorts. And I'm just curious if you could share a little bit about that.
absolutely. I've had two. I had another, what felt certainly like a near death experience once, whitewater river rafting, where the boat flipped and I was caught under for what was definitely too long. And I just thought, my kids were little at the time, and I thought, I have to get out from under. I've got two little kids at home. So they teach you this thing. It's like a cat. You claw out like a cat. And anyway, I got thrown all the way down the Tuolumne River and scraped up and banged up, and I was hyperventilating, and it was really scary. And eventually, Grant pulled me back into the raft and was, telling me that I was okay. And I was hyperventilating. I'm like, I'm not okay, and I was really scared.
Yeah.
And then he said, T, you're okay. You're going to be okay. And then I thought, okay, well, what choice do I have? So I'm going to choose that. And in the hospital after the accident, there was a point where I was in the process of dying, and I remember what I was thinking was, I want to go to G, which is what I call Grayon, and I want to be with God, and I want to go to the light. So I don't remember actually seeing a light, Scott, but I remember feeling that there
Yes.
was a light, and I remember it was euphoric. Like I was in, because most of what could break had broken, and I was in so much emotional and physical pain, going like on to whatever energy form we are and whatever is after, which I do believe, um felt euphoric, and I really wanted that, except that I saw my daughter's faces, and like they need me so badly. I have to stay here for them. So, but after that, the idea. Look, we're all going to die. That's the most natural thing in the world. And if we didn't, then there wouldn't be babies born. And so I'm not. I absolutely am not afraid of that. What's important to me is to live my life in a way that I'm living each day aligned with my values,
Yeah.
and that I am being kind and caring to other people and valuing friendships and relationships above everything else. Because then I'm having a great life, and I'm not. And then when the end comes, it's like one of the questions I'll ask in coaching is, if you knew that you had only one more year to live, and let's say that you weren't going to be suffering during this year, right? So you're not in pain, you're not debilitated, could be a great year, but you have one left, which none of us ever know. But let's say that's how much time you have left. What changes would you make? Like,
Hmm.
in what way would you live your life different than the way you're living it now? And I think that could be such a wake up call to people, because for me, I am living my life the way I want to live it. And so when I go, you know,
Well, there's a lot of adventure left in you, and I mean, this whole story, it's a love story, and you have grown so much through your entire life. And this recent chapter, you've spent the last couple of years, really kind of processing what's happened, but also, you've gone through it yourself, but you've also done a lot of studying, and now you're positioned yourself to be able to help other people through the same thing. So, do you want to just take a second to tell us about your coaching practice?
yeah, I do. And I just want to say one other thing, because my friends have been so incredibly amazing. And through the grieving process, my close friend Judith, who's a designer,
Mhm.
not professionally, but she'll do it for her closest friends or for herself. I built a house over the ocean, and she designed it. It was a labor of love, and we spent like 20 hours every week for 3 years building this beautiful home, because emotionally it was too hard for me to be in my home without Grant.
Right.
And so we built this beautiful home, and it was really a way to help me through the grieving process. And I just want to say that my friends and my kids and my dogs, so amazing helping me through it. The coaching process, yes, if anyone wants to reach me, it's T Adamson coaching at gmail.com. So it's TADAMSON coaching, COACHING at gmail.com. And I'm doing this, Scott, because my heart is really in it. I really, really want to help people to get through. We all have times where life throws us a curveball
Mhm.
and unexpected things happen. And I really, really want to help people get through challenges, find that they're stronger than they realized, and truly find their passion for life again.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. You are so strong and such an inspiration, and I really think the story is going to help a lot of people. So, Terry, it is an incredible story, and someday Hollywood's going to make a movie about you. So, who is the actress that's going to play you in your movie?
Let's have Tia Leone.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. I love it. What's your movie going to be called?
Okay, that's really funny. At one point during this podcast, I laughed at something you said, because I was thinking, "The Adventure Continues." You mentioned that in this
The
podcast, but
adventure
that's
does
what the
continue.
movie would be called, "The Adventure Continues."
I love that so much. Well, listen, I know Grant is in your heart, and
Always.
I know he's listening today. He's with us, and I really, really appreciate your time. And for those that are listening, I hope you have been inspired today as much as I have. I hope that Terry's story has encouraged you to listen to that voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or you need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. And Terry, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Scott, for your friendship and being such an inspiration to so many people.